And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Liz, who had a near-death experience due to hepatitis and meningitis. Liz, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Well, Liz, I think we need to get a little bit of backstory before we get into your NDE because you had a premonition about this or something, right?
I did have a premonition. I didn't know what it was at the time because I was a normie in those days. So I was a busy working mum with 3 young boys. And I worked in a school. It was just an ordinary school, but they had quite a lot of kids with emotional and behavioural difficulties. And I was a teacher assistant to look after those kids and try and teach them something. And I did that, although I'm a trained nurse, I did that job so I could look after my own kids because the school hours. So I could work and be there for my own kids. So I used to come home from work, get them from their school, bring them home, and then I'd take my dog out the back. There were woods at the back of the house. And I used to walk along a disused railway track. And it must have been about 6 weeks before I was ill, I just had this really heavy feeling in my chest. And it would be there whenever I wasn't specifically busy with something. So while I was walking, my mind was at rest, and this feeling, it would be like a really heavy, something awful was going to happen, something awful. I knew something awful was going to happen. I thought it was going to be an accident, and I was driving really carefully because I thought something's going to happen to me. Anyway, it wasn't an accident. It was the illness. So a lot of these kids came from pretty unpleasant backgrounds, and one little boy, whose name I won't mention, he must be in 40-something by now, but anyway, he was 6 then. He came to school, his mum bought him, she knew he was ill, and she just shoved him into my arms and said she had to go shopping. Fair enough. And he didn't want to be, I had a little cot bed for kids that were sick, but he didn't want to go in the cot bed. He wanted to be on my lap. So I had him on my lap and he fell asleep and I was working with the other kids. And then he sat up, looked at me and vomited in my face. And it turned out that he had hepatitis, and then of course so did I. So the next day I woke up to go to work and I just couldn't get out of bed. So my husband took the kids to school and he rang me in sick. You know, when you say the same as we do, ring you in sick. So, and then I don't remember anything else. Apparently, he told me afterwards, he kept ringing me through the day. I didn't know. No mobiles, but we did have a landline in the bedroom. So if I'd been conscious, I would have heard it, but I didn't. And he was worried, so he came home in the early afternoon and called an ambulance because I was obviously not very well. I remember bits and pieces of the ambulance men. I remember the blue lights of the ambulance. Took me into hospital. I don't remember most of it. Flashes in and out. So I must have been drifting in and out of consciousness. But I do remember that they put me in a room on my own. I didn't know what I had, and they didn't know then. And I can remember that I felt like I was going to drift away like a balloon, a helium balloon. You know, birthday balloons, they float, don't they? I felt like that. I felt I was going to drift away, and then I must have lost consciousness because the next thing I knew, I was looking down at myself. I was on the ceiling looking down, and all I could think was what a mess I looked. I looked awful, and I just thought, why doesn't someone comb my hair? Because I looked a real mess, really. And I mean, it's bizarre. I didn't think, oh my God, I'm dying, or anything sensible. I just thought I look really untidy. Why doesn't somebody tidy me up? I suppose having been a nurse, it just looked bad to me to see a patient look like that. And then I looked at the tops of the lights and they were all covered in dust. And I thought, that's awful, filthy in here. And then I could see in the corner of the room, because it was early spring, probably this time of year, actually, 1990. I looked in the corner of the room and there was a bit of tinsel, Christmas decoration, still stuck to the wall. They'd obviously pulled it down and left a little bit of red tinsel on the wall. So I noted that and a few other things. And then I just floated up to the ceiling. You don't feel anything, you just go through it like it's not there. I suppose you're not there, that's the thing. And the next thing I knew, I was outside. And the next thing I knew after that, I was in this space that I think some of your guests have called the void, but none of them that I've heard on your show have ever explained it the way I felt it. It was dark, but it wasn't bad dark. It was a nice, comfortable dark. And it wasn't black, it was sort of greyish. And it was a bit like, if you might suspend something in a very viscous fluid, it's sort of held. I felt held in this space. It was not at all frightening, wasn't horrible. There's nothing else there that I could see, but I didn't mind. And I could feel myself expanding. Just not like being blown up. It was like being released, if you like. Just expanding and expanding. I could feel it. It was really lovely feeling. And then as that was happening, I could see, I'm going to say in the distance, actually you can't tell whether it's distant because there's nothing else. So how do you can't say if something's far away or it isn't. But it was a tiny speck of very bright light. And I thought, oh, looks interesting. So I started you don't walk, right? You just go, I suppose, float. So I started to move towards this light. And all I could feel was curiosity. And the thing was, everything in the world had just gone. Like if you have a dream, you wake up from a dream, and you've had a dream, but as you're thinking about it, it sort of disappears and you can't remember. And it's like the rags of that dream just go off, don't they? They just vanish. And it sounds awfully callous, but I didn't give the world second thought, not a second thought. I just wanted to go and see what that little light was because it looked interesting. And then I heard in my right ear a voice, and it was like, if you, in the old days when you had a really nice hi-fi and really good quality headphones, it was like that, but it was only on one side. So it felt like the voice was in my head, but it wasn't. It wasn't me. It was outside of me. And the voice said, what about the children? And I thought, oh my God, I'd forgotten them. And it was like I'd left them at the shops and gone home without them. And as soon as the voice said that, it wasn't Jesus. I knew who it was afterwards, but I didn't know at the time. And I didn't see anybody. It was just the voice. It was very gentle, very kind. What about the children? I turned on my heel and just having the intention to go back. Oh, I must get back. I must go back. I've left the kids. And oh my God, I slammed back into my body, which I was in a lot of pain because meningitis is extremely painful. It's just really bad pain in your head. and I had a lot of abdominal pain because of the enlarged liver. I slammed back into my body, and oh boy, and I had that feeling of having to squeeze into it. At the time, I didn't realise, but of course, I had a lot of time to think about it while I was ill for 18 months afterwards. And I'd had that feeling before when I was a very small child, probably about 5. I can remember feeling that I was too big for my body. And I remember saying to my mother, I'm too big for my body. And she thought I was complaining about being the youngest because I'm the youngest of 4. But it wasn't that at all. And I didn't have the words to explain it. I felt I didn't fit inside my body. Well, I forgot about it. I was 5 until this happened. And the going back into my body after I'd expanded, it was that same feeling. I didn't fit. I didn't fit. It was like putting on a wetsuit that's too small, if you've ever done that. I've done that. And I remembered from when I was a child that it was the same feeling. And another thing I remembered from childhood, I had a difficult childhood. And I was about 4, and there was about a very traumatic episode with my mother. She wouldn't have won any parenting prizes, that's for sure. She used to lose her temper a lot, and she'd lost her temper with me, and I got sent to bed with no tea on my own, which was horrible for me because there were 4 of us, 4 little girls, and we were together all the time. So to be separated from my sisters was a big punishment. So anyway, I was sent into a room on my own to go to sleep, and I was sobbing, and I was sobbing for my granddad, although I'd never met him, my mother's father, but my mother used to talk about him very fondly. And in my little child's head, I thought that if he was here, she wouldn't be as mean as she was. That's what I thought in my little head. So I was crying for him. I had no clear idea of him being able to come back from the dead. I didn't. I was 4. So, but I was sobbing for him, sobbing and sobbing. And this voice frightened the Jesus out of me. This voice comforted me, told me to calm down, it'll be all right, you're all right. Frightened me. I went under the covers, and it did the trick because I went to sleep because I was so scared. I stopped crying. And after I had the NDE, I remembered that was his voice. So I'm convinced that it was my grandfather who came to me. So that was all of the actual bit while I was on the other side. But the most extraordinary bit was what happened afterwards, because in those days, there were no computers. There was certainly no chat rooms and YouTube and all that. I found out later that a book had been published about NDEs, but I didn't know about it. There was nothing woo-woo about me. I was just an ordinary working mum. I didn't have time for nonsense like that. So I couldn't refer to anything. When I came round, because the nurses kept doing levels of consciousness, they give you painful stimuli, pinch your ears and rub your chest bones, things like that. I knew they were trying to get me to come round, and eventually I did come round. And the first thing I did was blurt it out to a nurse. It was on the ceiling. I was like, because I didn't know you weren't supposed to. And I told my sisters and I told my husband, and everybody was looking at me as though I was off my rocker, exchanging worried looks with each other. And the next thing I knew in the hospital is they sent a psychiatrist round. And I knew what he was doing. because I'm a trained nurse. I knew he was giving me a psychiatric assessment. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to shut up about this because they think I'm Bam Bam. Looking back on it, I can see I sounded nuts. But so I stopped. I said it a few more times to my sisters, but generally I stopped talking about it. But it didn't help because the things that had changed for me were enormous, and I had no one to tell. The first thing I realised was that a porter came to collect me to take me down to have another brain scan. They kept scanning and testing, and collected me in a wheelchair, and he was wheeling me down to X-ray, and he had to wheel me along a corridor where there were big picture windows all down one side that overlooked a courtyard garden, big one, big courtyard garden. And I looked out this window. I could not believe what I was seeing. I asked him to stop. He was very kind, and he did stop. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. All the plants, I could see their aura. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what an aura was. All I could see was all the plants and shrubs and trees were radiating this glow from the inside, as though they had an internal light source. And they were the most incredible colours. It was wintertime, early spring, so there were no leaves or anything, but they were incredible colours. And I said to the porter, can you see that? And he said, see what? I said, can you see the colours? He said, I see browns and greens. I said, but can you see the rest of it? And he couldn't, of course. And that was my first taste of the frustration of being able to see things that other people couldn't see. And I didn't know anybody who was woo-woo to ask. So he couldn't see that. He was very kind. He stood there for 10 or 15 minutes while I took all this in. And then when my children came in to visit, I could see their auras. I could see it round their little heads. And adults as well, but children most of all. It wasn't too bad while I was still in hospital because you're just in a room. But once I got home, I was 4 weeks in hospital. Once I got home, it was just incredible. It was overwhelming. So I could see all these colours. I could see children's auras. And the most interesting thing, I think, most helpful thing probably, but it took me months and months to assimilate it all. I'm saying it quickly as though it happened overnight. It didn't. I was ill for 18 months, and it took all of that time for me to get the hang of it. When I grew up, when we were little, because my parents were so unregulated, and they lose their tempers and fight with each other and all the rest of it. And when you grow up like that, when your parents can't manage their own emotions, they put that onto the kids. Of course, when you're the kid, you don't know that. You don't even know that it's not normal what they're doing. You don't realise it's just normal to you. Until I grew up not knowing where I ended and somebody else began. So when I was young, before the experience, if somebody came into the room and they were in a bad mood, I just thought it was me, because that's how I was brought up, you see, because we got blamed for that. So if say you came round to see me and you were in a bad mood about something that happened at work, I would think that was my fault. I would think it was me, there was something wrong, I'd done something wrong, I had to fix it, I had to make you all right again, because that's what I had to do with my parents, or my mother particularly. After the experience, I could see it's like an energy field. I don't know how else to explain it. I could see and feel that was yours. was. It was nothing to do with me. And I didn't have to fix it. But nothing to do with me. I could just not take responsibility for it. You know, what's that? Is it called cymatics, where you can make a musical vibration on sand or something and it makes a pattern? Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure if
Is
it's,
it called cymatics?
I'm not sure actually.
Cymatics? You know, you can
Cymatics or
make,
psionics?
can't remember the word for it, but you can draw a bowstring across a metal tray with sand in it, and it will form into a pattern for whatever, or you can put a tuning fork on it, and it's whatever that note is that you're playing, it will form a pattern. Well, when you play another note, the sand goes into chaos, goes into disarray. Especially if you do it on water, it goes into disarray before it falls into another pattern. Well, that moment of disarray, that's what it's like when somebody else is having negative emotions and they come into the room. I can see it. I can feel it. It's most unpleasant. But the upside was I knew it wasn't me. And I'd never known that before. I never realised that before. So then what started happening as well is I started having what I now call downloads, but don't forget this is before computers. There's no such term as a download. Okay, I now call it downloads because I still get them. So I would just have this thought, this persistent thought in my head that would not go away. It just would not go away. And the persistent thought that came into my head was that I should go back to university, go back to studying. I didn't know how to. I had no clue. Going to university wasn't a thing in our family. Surviving was a thing. Getting away was a thing. You know, we didn't have posh notions of university education, but it kept on. And the illness left me with rheumatoid arthritis, which I still have, which was really bad at the time. I could hardly walk. I was having steroid injections and it was really bad. And there was this voice. It wasn't really a voice, it was a thought. And I kept saying to it, how am I going to do that? I don't know how to even start. And then I would come across a leaflet. I was in the doctors and I came across a leaflet for an access to university course. Because it had been so long since I left school, you know, you had to do something to get in. So I picked it up, I read it, and I applied, and I got a place, and I passed, and I applied to university, and I got a place, and I got in, and I got a degree, and all these things were what I now call downloads. I was being nudged, and if I ignored it, it did something stronger. And it would do something more. I still get those a lot. I still get it. I know what it is now, and I'm grateful for it. But in those days, I didn't know. I thought it was going round bend. I didn't know what it was, but I followed it because it was easier than not following it. So I ended up in university. I ended up studying Buddhism. And I practiced Buddhism for 17 years, and the marriage didn't survive the illness for a number of reasons. But I mean, now that I've seen programs like yours, I see that it's quite common that marriages don't survive NDs. It's quite common because you become such a different person. You're just not who you were, and you can't explain it, especially in those days. And of course, my husband just insisted I was dreaming. I know very well I wasn't dreaming. I told him about the dust on the lights because you couldn't see it from below. You could only see it from above. And he just said, well, it's obvious they'll be dusty. So I told him about the bit of Christmas decoration, and he did look, and it was there. But he just said, "Oh well, just after Christmas, there's bound to be Christmas decorations, and maybe you did see it when you came in or something." I knew I hadn't, and just, yeah, I was just too different. It was just too different after that. So we stayed together while I was still ill, obviously. I did tell him what I was planning. I would get a degree, get a better job, look after myself and the boys. And I did tell him, he just didn't believe me. He just didn't believe me. Even though I studied Buddhism, I practiced Buddhism, I wanted to do something spiritual, but I didn't, in those days, it's changed now, but in those days I didn't believe in God at all. I was, you know, a complete up and down atheist, materialist. You know, I didn't believe in anything like that. I didn't have a religion or anything. And I have to say, even after the NDE, I still didn't. It took me years to come round to where I am now. Decades to come around to. I'm 72 this year. This was 1990. I was under 40. But I stuffed it. Even though I studied Buddhism, I stuffed it because there was no one to talk to who wasn't either worried because they thought I'd lost the plot or would use it against me, because people can be quite nasty, can't they? And they can use things like that against you. So I had to stuff it. I stuffed it, and I didn't look into it. I didn't inquire about it. I did my studies. I just studied psychology at university, and then I did a master's after that. And I practiced Buddhism and I studied that. But that's as far as spirituality went. Buddhism's quite a convenient philosophy for people who want to be spiritual but don't want to believe in God, because they don't believe in God. So I did that for years, but gradually, since the internet came on, and think programs like yours, I've just remembered more. I've gone back to it. I see how mine is different from other people's. I mean, some people have incredible experiences. I'm glad mine wasn't more than it was, because it was hard enough to cope with what it was. But since then, I've had UFO experiences. I had an experience with greys, gnomes. What else? I talk to my guides all the time now. What would you call that? Higher self, some people say. Guides, angels, I don't know. I don't think it matters what you call them. But I know there's something, and it's the same thing that was pushing me to go to university and do all those things. So I can now, I mean, I've shut it out for a long time, but now I can ask.
Do you
get help.
do you think you see UFOs, greys, and gnomes as a result of your NDE?
Yeah. I've seen 2 UFOs, one quite close, with other people in daylight. And I had a extraordinary dream. I'm going to say dream. I mean, it was recent. It was last year. And in the dream, I woke up because there was somebody in my room. I live alone. I live in an annex. Kids are in the house, the main house, but I'm in this part of the house on my own. I sleep alone for sure. And I woke up because there was somebody else in the room. And I sat up, and there were 3, what we now call short greys, small greys, standing by my bed. My bed's against the wall, and they were all standing in the room looking at me. And I sat up and I said, where have you been? Peevishly, I was cross with them. Where have you been? I've been waiting for so long. And one of them took my hand and we walked out. I've got patio doors. Obviously, they were shut because it was night time. And we walked out through the door, and I don't remember any more of that. Don't remember anything else. And it was so vivid, and it was so more than a dream, definitely more than a dream. I saw one UFO close up. I saw one. I used to live in Cornwall, which is the very pointy toe end of England, the peninsula at the end, at the bottom, southwest. And it's very rural down there, and so you don't get light pollution much. And the night skies are beautiful. And I was walking my dog last thing at night on my own, and very, very dark night. And I could see, I thought, what's that? You know, in Venus is very bright, like that sort of brightness. And this thing was doing, can you see my finger? This thing was doing this. I thought, what is that? So I went back to the house and got my binoculars. I could see it a bit better. I couldn't see any more than that it was a light, but it was zigzagging like that in a way that nothing moves like that. It wasn't a comet, it wasn't a shooting star, it wasn't an aeroplane, it wasn't a helicopter, it wasn't. Certainly, I've never seen Venus do that before. Anyway, it was in the wrong place for Venus, but it was doing this zig, zig, zig. I must have watched it for 15 minutes, and then it just went, disappeared, gone. So that was the first one. And the second one was quite recently. It was about, well, it was 2021. It was 2021. It was summertime. It was the middle of the afternoon. And I was walking my dog in the park. And I looked up, and there was this cigar shaped like a fat Christmas cigar, brown, sort of tanny brown colour. No windows, no wings, no tail, no nothing, just this smooth shape. And it was moving really slowly. If it had been a small aircraft, it would have stalled. It was too slow. And because it was there for so long, I was able to watch it for a good 15 or 20 minutes. I could tell it was moving against the prevailing wind. So it was under power for sure. No sound. It was about 3 tree tops high, so not very high. And I stopped. This young guy was walking along, and I stopped him and I said, "Your eyes are younger than mine. What's that?" And he looked. And then as we stood there looking, along came this woman. She said, "What are you looking at?" I said, "Look at that." In the end, there were about 6 of us standing, looking at this thing. And we just watched it until it went out of view. Just disappeared. No idea what that was. No idea. It wasn't an aircraft, a conventional aircraft. It wasn't a blimp thing, you know, like a balloon. It wasn't a balloon. It was under power. So that was the second one. The gnomes were climbing up the back of my bedroom chair. There were four of them, and they were exactly as you would expect. Exactly. Bare chests, pointy hats, pointy shoes, little axes, little ropes. They were about a foot tall. And they were climbing up the back of my chair as like you would be rock climbing. And I was poorly, but I wasn't feverish. So I just watched them, and they took not the blindest bit of notice of me. I didn't exist for them. And I think they shouldn't have existed for me, but they did. I could see them clearly. So weird things like that. Yeah, weird things. I've had quite a few.
Do you fear death?
No, 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 it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. I spent a long time after the ending, and when I still do it periodically, trying to get out of my body again. And although I followed instructions, because Preston Dennett does a thing where he helps people try and get out of their body, he's very good. Does it for free as well. And I can't do it again. I did it once. As soon as I got out, I was so excited about being out, so I shot straight back in again. And I've never been able to get out again. But just the relief of not being embodied. You have no idea. You have no idea. It's just, and that feeling of when you're on the other side, you have no worries at all. And it's not like you're on holiday and you're reading a book and you've shelved everything for a fortnight, but you've got to go back to it. It's not like that. You have no worries. Nothing hurts. Imagine that. Nothing. Nothing hurts. Especially when you're poorly, it's just that release and that feeling of being held in the most gentle and loving way. It's just, yeah, I would love to get back to that. Obviously, I'm not going to do anything stupid, but I would love to get back to that. And there's nothing frightening about any of it. There isn't.
Many of my guests describe the void as being velvety and thick.
Softer than that. Softer than velvet. It's the closest I can think is being held in a very viscous fluid. It's warm, but not too warm. It's comfortable. It's more than being embraced because you're being held. I can't describe it. You can't describe it, not adequately.
You encountered your grandfather during your NDE.
Mm.
Since the experience, have you had any more communication with him?
No, not that I'm aware it's him. I mean, my guides could be anybody, really, but I've not heard his voice again. There was one occasion, and I thought it might have been him. It was 2021 because I still had my dog, and it wasn't COVID, so it must have been just after the last lockdown. And my sisters still live in the south, and I live in the north. So I was driving down the main motorway from north to south here, and it was the hottest day of the year. I had my dog, and we were driving down the A1M, it's called, and just north of the M25 is the London Circular motorway. So usually I drive down, hit the M25, and then take that to my sister's house. And I got to just north of the M25, and I heard this voice say very clearly to me, "Take the next exit." And I said out loud, because I was alone, I said, "No, what do you want to do that for? It would take me miles out of my way." I said, "No, daft." A few yards later, "Take the exit." And I said, "No, I need the M25. I'm not taking the exit." Within 2 minutes, a lorry in front of me exploded. It was carrying aerosols, and because it was so hot, it exploded, melted the tarmac. They closed the motorway in both directions. They also closed the M25. I sat there for 8 hours. 8 hours on the motorway with everybody else. They wouldn't let us off. They wouldn't let us back up. And we sat there and sat there and sat there. Yeah, it was pretty. Nobody was hurt. The driver was okay. I saw him. He was taken off in a police car, but he was unhurt, shaken, I expect. And we just sat there for hours. Some young lads jumped over the central reservation to the other carriageway, which was empty because they blocked the road further down, started playing football on the motorway. It was just bizarre. It was really bizarre. But that, I thought, might have been my granddad. Take the exit, take the exit. And of course, did I listen? No, I didn't listen. But whenever I don't listen to my voice or my urges, I regretted it. So generally I listen. Generally I do listen. And I know, I have knowings about things. It sounds most unreasonable. Because you just say to an ordinary person, no, that's wrong. That's not true. That's a lie. And you've got no proof and nothing to back it up with. It sounds most unreasonable, but I'm always right. Well, it's not me, is it? But, you know, the information is always correct. Always correct. I just know. I know.
Do you feel like you're still processing your NDE?
Yeah. I don't think you ever stop. I think that's why people write books, because it helps you to write it down, helps you to get it out of, well, you can't get it out of your system because it is your system. It becomes your system. I think people that you see online, you know, some people have podcasts and they write books and stuff, and I think that's why, because you're still dealing with it, because you never. I mean, I suppose it must be different if you're a bit woo-woo to begin with, but when your worldview is so ordinary and so mainstream and so materialist, when you're very much like that and an atheist as well, it's a tremendous shock. It's, you know, I keep thinking of, what was his name, that bloke, Daniel Dennett? Is he the one that's died? One of those radical atheists.
I'm not sure.
Daniel Dennett? No, not one of them. Really, really unpleasant bloke. Anyway, he died last year or the year before. I just kept thinking, he's going to get such a shock when he gets there. He's going to get the shock of his life. Yeah.
Did you see angels or any religious figures or God?
No, because in those days I wasn't religious. And I listening to other people, I think you get sent what you believe in. And I didn't believe in anything like that then. Although we had a ghost when I was growing up, 2 ghosts in that house. So I kind of knew there were things that can't be explained rationally. But do you know what I mean? You kind of shelve it. You put it in a box over there and don't really talk about it. But the house was haunted that I grew up in. So I knew from little that there was weirdnesses. But I didn't integrate that into my adult life. I just sort of forgot about it, really. It's how it was when we were little. And I just forgot about it. But yeah, most of the stuff, except the childhood ghost and my granddad, most of the stuff happens after the NDE. But people of other religions, not everybody's a Christian, are they? They see what they believe in. They'll see Krishna or whatever, won't they? They won't see Jesus necessarily. Although I have heard people that saw Ramana Maharshi and didn't know who it was till they saw a picture of him. Can't remember who that was now, but somebody might have been one of your guests. but saw this bloke in an NDE, and then later saw him in a photograph and was like, oh, that was the bloke I saw. So it's not always what you believe in, but I think mostly you get sent what's familiar and what will comfort you and keep you from being frightened, I think. I think so.
If you had a friend that was grieving over the loss of a loved one, what type of advice would you give?
The only times have you said that I'm doing this with you? The only times I really talk about it is when somebody is upset because they're grieving, or I had the privilege to nurse somebody who was dying of motor neurone disease a few years ago before I retired. And I know my story helped her. I wrote it down for her so that she could have it on her computer because she couldn't move. She had it on her computer screen and she could look at it. So I know that helped her. And I have talked to people who have lost somebody. But, I've been on the end of that stick as well because I've lost somebody almost every year since 2012. So it kind of helps, but it kind of doesn't because they're still gone. You can tell somebody they're not suffering, they're perfectly fine, they're having a nice time. They're still around if you want them. Quite a few of my loved ones have come back to me in dream form, but it doesn't really, it helps them to know that their loved one isn't suffering, but it doesn't take the grief away because they're still gone. From our point of view, they're still gone, aren't they? But it does help people to know they're not suffering. They're not suffering. They're not suffering. I don't believe that there's a hell. I think it's nonsense. I know some people have described that, but I think again it's because that's what they were expecting. They were expecting that, so that's what they got. I don't think it's real. It's not real. Interdimensional beings, they're real. ET, that's real. Guides, they're real.
Do you think elves and fairies are real?
Yeah.
Have you seen them?
No. But I've sensed there's quite a bit of countryside round where I live, and I was walking in a bit of forest that nobody goes to. It's quite high elevation. I was a few years ago now, and I sensed so strongly that they just didn't want me there. It was go away, and I did. And the next time I went, I took an offering. And I apologised, and I didn't go any further. I just put the offering and left. I feel those things, and water as well, which sounds bizarre, I know, but I was sitting on the riverbank when my dog was alive. He was a Labrador, so he liked to go in the water. And I was sitting on a rock, just looking at the bubbling water flowing down, and I just said to myself quietly, it's something to do with water. It being, the mystery. It's something to do with water. And the voice came and said, it's everything to do with water.
Who was that voice?
Water. It was less Grandad's voice and more of a really loud thought in my head. It's everything to do with, and I laughed out loud. Everything to do with water. So then I started looking at some people's work. Have you heard of Veda Austin?
I don't think so.
She's a New Zealander. She's lovely, beautiful woman. And she's done. Who was the Japanese guy who froze snowflakes and? What's his name?
I know who you're speaking of, but I don't recall his name.
You know who I mean? Well, she has taken that work much further. And she's written a book. It's a beautiful book. And what she does is she she has petri dishes. She'll show the water something. I don't know, a leaf, say, or a rose. And then she freezes it. And she's got a method of flash freezing, which I can't complicated. And then when she takes the petri dish out, there's the image in the ice. You can see what she's shown it. And she's done masses of work with water. And there's another guy, I think he's American, and he's found the fourth state of water. Easy, you say. Easy water. It's really worth looking at. Ever so interesting. So that's things like that. There's a lot about water. It's conscious. There's a consciousness in water.
When you gave that offering, what did you offer?
I offered some water in a little paper thing, so it's biodegradable, and just some nuts, just like nuts you would eat at home, just on the ground. I mean, animals will eat it, but it's not the point. But I hear that the Welsh spirit of the woods, and I've forgotten his name because he's Welsh. Gwynapneith, his name is. He likes tobacco, apparently. He likes tobacco. But that only works in this country, I think. I don't know if he exists. You have your own spirits, I'm sure. But the fairy of the woods here is Gwynapneith. Be nice to him because he can be tricksy.
Liz, after watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
I am open to it, but I don't know how they would, because I don't do social media, and I've got an email address, obviously. I'm very happy to talk to people because I know how it feels to be alone with it. It's very lonely when you're alone with it. So I'm happy to do that. I don't know if you have a mechanism by which you can make that happen, but I don't do social media.
You could give out an email address if you like.
Yeah, I give out my email address. Yeah. It's my silly email address. It's not my posh email address. And it's my YouTube handle, so it's not my actual name. But I use Amanita muscaria because it's the red spotty mushroom. So that's my YouTube handle. But I'm happy for people to do that. So as long as they're going to be sensible and not have a go at me for being nuts or whatever, I'm not up for that at all.
Are you posting videos on your YouTube channel?
I don't do anything like that. This is the first sort of public thing I've ever done. The most public thing I've done before, we used to have Buddhist meetings in our own homes. And sometimes, quite often, people didn't know each other. So I used to do an icebreaker just so people could chat and warm up. And I used to say, have you ever had an experience you can't rationally explain? And do you know, almost everyone has. Almost everyone. And if they say no, 10 minutes later, they'll go, oh, wait a minute. It was that time when I was a kid. Or my grandma said so-and-so, or they'll remember something. Almost everybody has had something they can't explain. It's very common, but people, even now, with all the technology we've got, people don't talk about it.
Did you write a book?
No. I could. I haven't. I don't think I don't know. How would you make a good narrative out of that? I don't know. It's a bit bitty and I just had so much criticism when it first happened and so much skepticism. People can be mean, They can be really, they think it's okay to bully people. And no, I never wrote anything about. I've never written it. This is the first time.
Liz, before we finish up, can you give us a last positive message?
Don't be afraid. What's the first thing that angels and ETs say to everybody? Don't be afraid. Be not afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's a dream. Some people would say a nightmare. It's a dream. It's not real. And when you get to the other side, you can see it. You can realise that it's not real. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, go for it with our kids and grandkids and all the rest of it. Of course, live your life to the full. But don't be afraid. And don't let people in the media convince you that there's something to be afraid of. Because there isn't. There isn't. I promise you, it's not horrible. It's delicious. You'll love it. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Liz, thank you for your message and thank you for being my guest.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.